Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Jimmy's Jambox. We're here. We're back at it again, and we're going to get on into it. But before we do, as always, please make sure to like, subscribe, push all the buttons, do all the things. You know, I don't know where they are, but you do, and I trust you. And with that being said, here's a quick word from our sponsors. Organic herbs and botanicals, skincare and edibles, wellness for body and mind. The Brothers Apothecary. Fine teas and remedies. Ronald Records. From indie gems to classic hits, discover the heart of local music. With live shows all the time, up close and personal, and regular releases on their in-house label. Ronald Records. Supporting the community, one track at a time. All right, thank y'all so much for watching. Again, shout out The Brothers Apothecary, Ronald Records, and Portland Water. Thanks for keeping us hydrated. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get on into it. Here is today's guest.
Hey, I'm Maykenzie Joy.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about, who you are, where you're from, what you do, give us that Tinder profile of your
Oh my Lord. I am a musician from Portland, not originally, but where I've been for the last 7 years. And I do music prep by day and musicianing by night.
Oh man, so you're literally 100% music 100% of the time.
I try to be. I definitely try to be.
I guess that's a good way to always stay, if you get ready, or if you're always ready, you don't have to get ready. What's the old saying?
Yeah, no, it's never not on the mind, which is nice.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And where are you at from prior to here?
California born and raised, and then Massachusetts for a minuscule.
Okay.
Yeah.
From Massachusetts minute.
Yes. See, right there.
Hell yeah. Well, that's cool. How long were you in California for? Is that where you're from?
It's where I'm from originally. I was there for 17 years.
Okay.
Just kind of bopping around the Bay.
Yeah.
And then Massachusetts, not too far outside of Boston.
Okay.
Yeah, for a year and a half.
I'm from the Bay Area myself, so.
Yeah.
Stomping grounds.
Very much stomping grounds. Yeah.
What got you into music initially?
I was always a creative at heart. Mm-hmm. That's just kind of always been a thing. I don't think there wasn't anything particularly it wasn't I had a super musical family. Mm-hmm. It was always just me and my mom. But my grandfather played accordion and there was music there.
Okay.
But I just was always very into the creative side of things. And at the time I was very into Broadway musicals, stuff like that. And I think
The Greatest Showman.
Yes. My mom could tell how much music was a thing for me before I really understood it. I was just always singing and hitting things and playing air drums and air guitar and whatever. And she was the one who was I think this is... Here, let's give you something to do with that. This is something you care about. So
stop using the pots and pans.
Yeah, stop just smashing things. Yeah, pretty much. So it's always been in there, and I've just kind of rolled with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you start on vocals? Did you start on guitar? What was your first musical thing?
I would sing a lot, just nonsensically. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was kind of always what I did, and I did do musicals as a kid and stuff like that, and I was writing in theory. I just make up songs, but then in terms of lessons, I started playing guitar at 11.
Okay.
But that was very much just to play as I sing eventually. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely more on the singing route than any of the instrumental side.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, before we get into more of what you do with that in the present day, I do have a couple foundation questions I check in with everybody on.
Ooh, okay.
And this first one is one we ask early, it's one we ask often, and it's definitely a crowd favorite.
Ooh, fun.
What was the first album you ever bought with your own money?
I do have an answer for this.
Oh, exciting.
I think I was like 8 or something in a Best Buy with my mom because she loved getting CDs. And the first CD that I bought for myself was Billy Idol's Greatest Hits. For some reason, my mom had introduced me to him, and I think I was just obsessed with Rebel Yell as a kid, and so I saw that and then spiky hair and was like, oh, I want that. I want that specifically. My mom was very pleased. Like, she was so proud of me, and that definitely I can see how that has lent to me as a musician.
Fair. Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. I am also a very big Billy Idol fan.
Yeah.
As a joke, before I moved up here for Christmas, my old roommate got me a Billy Idol CD, and he was like, "You have to keep this in your car."
Yeah.
And
where it lives.
So I went and got a car, and it had no CD player.
Yes.
And I was like, no,
that's
why is that?
That's
so
where
cool?
all of my collection of CDs had been for so long until now cars.
Yeah, they don't have CD players, and it's rude.
Worse.
It's rude, but I do still have the CD.
Good, me too.
Hell yeah.
One of the few.
Yes. And then what was one of the first live shows you ever went to? That was like specifically one you wanted to go to.
We
so you
went
saw it was happening
to on purpose.
Got tickets, went to it.
There's a difference. The accidental, like, we were at a like county fair or whatever, but Bowling for Soup played, which I think is amazing that was my first concert experience. But I think my mom surprised me in the era of Camp Rock, Jonas Brothers tickets. Like during that time where like they were touring with Demi Lovato and
good time to see
timing for Jonas Brothers.
If you're gonna go see them, that's a good time.
And it was an amazing time for me. And I also ended up my first legal concert, so like when I was of legal drinking age at 21, was also Jonas Brothers. So I really brought that back.
I was gonna say, how was that one in comparison?
I mean, nothing could compare to like our youth in their prime. But hearing all of those again really did something to me. So it was a great time. I have no complaints.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine they were both great shows.
Oh my God. Amazing shows.
And then before we officially get into what you do in the present day, do you have a defining moment where you decided you wanted to take music more seriously? And I know it's kind of a tough one because you've been pretty about it since the beginning.
Yeah. I think I've been doing, stuff as a kid, but I think when I like came into consciousness as like a serious, I want to do this, was probably around 12, 13. And that's when I got really into Taylor Swift and watching kind of the songwriter making everything your own kind of style. And that also led into me getting into country music too and starting on this similar route because I saw
somebody
that.
has to.
Somebody had to. Somebody had to, and she did, and then I thought I should too. But yeah, I think seeing kind of her at such a young age doing that, it spoke to exactly how I would want to do my thing, which is kind of write and create everything in my own vision. So I really respected that, and I think 12. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Baby.
Shout out to Taylor Swift.
That's this whole thing.
But now let's go ahead and let's get on into today.
Okay.
However, we're going to get what I think is a super easy one out of the way.
Okay.
How'd you pick the name?
It is pretty easy. Maykenzie Joy. That is my first and middle name. My last name is Freeman. I always joke about being related to Morgan Freeman. It's the freckles. Yeah. But my mom is great at the whole unique thing, I guess. My mom's grandma was Charlotte May was her name, and I think she got the May from that. And then Maykenzie Joy is such a cool thing that she put together, and I can only hats off to her.
Yeah.
It makes it really difficult because no one really ever says my name right, which is dumb because this is not a difficult name, but
How do they normally say it?
It's usually Maykenzie because that's what we know. I've definitely, like, I've had people say, like, are you sure in terms of my own spelling as I spell it? And I'm like, I think I might know.
Oh, no, sorry.
Sorry. Oh, man. Yeah. But no, but I kind of like that. I've had to kind of reiterate my name a lot because of it, which makes it memorable.
You'll say people won't forget it when they hear it more than once.
Yeah. So again, thanks, Mom, for knowing I needed that, I guess. Yeah.
Hell yeah. I dig that.
But
and then let's go ahead and let's talk about your writing process a little bit.
Ooh, okay.
Now, we're gonna cover kind of all of it, but we're gonna break it up into chunks and start right at the beginning.
Okay.
So when you get inspired, you're ready to make music.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you do to get a track started?
Oh, I feel like often I have a pretty similar starting point with a lot of things. I am very word oriented. If I'm like going to write, I don't usually sit down and say, hey, I'm gonna write something now. I just start writing. And it's usually pretty linear. So if I'm writing, the first verse into the chorus, into the second verse, like that's usually how it goes. I don't often switch it up, but sometimes. But it's words first, and it's finding, I have like a cadence to what I write. I have a musicality to all of kinds of writing, but melody is like something I have to kind of mash it into with what I'm thinking at the same time. So it doesn't come nearly as like naturally as like, oh, I got the melody and the words.
Yeah.
It's like, I know timing wise how this is supposed to work, but then I have to fit it to a melody, kind of play puzzles with it. And then that has to fit to the instrumentation. So it's a block by block process.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you do a lot of the instrumentation yourself as well?
No. Usually if I'm writing, I'm my main instrument is guitar. That's what I know the best. I've written on like bass and a little bit on keys, but those are harder for me to translate live.
Yeah.
So I kind of stick to the like me and a guitar, which is never what the song is in my head. I don't like the ideology of just being like the acoustic guitar singer-songwriter, which I madly respect.
Yeah.
But I don't have the like virtuosic instrumentality for that.
Yeah.
And that's never what I hear my songs as.
No,
They're
I mean
usually
that
band oriented.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I start with that and then immediately go, man, I wish I could just put what's in here out there.
Fair.
But I need help with that for sure.
Yeah. Do you have any like live artists that you like play with when you want to make that a reality?
I have my close friend who's also my producer for my current music. He's kind of like one of the first and few people that what I've spoken about in terms of my music translates to really well. We have a lot of similar inspirations and things. And when I try to explain it, he like gets it. So anyone that's going to understand what I mean is him, and we'll sit down and, throw things in an arrangement. And it's the first time I finally hear it as what I want to hear it as. So I'm very lucky that I've been in that scenario where he gets it.
Oh, yeah. No, it's definitely, I think having somebody that can kind of be on that other side really goes a long way. I mean, we talk about it a little off camera, but like the ability to like focus on what you're strong at and then have somebody who can kind of like add that extra layer on.
Totally.
It works in both directions.
Well, just being like having like a symbiotic musical relationship. It's rare and it's really, really useful. And I mean, we're both in each other's bands. His name's James Julian Villa is his artist name, and he we kind of supplement each other in so many ways because of that. And I feel like that's just so like lightning in a bottle. Yeah. Which is, I'm glad I've been able to have that.
It's electric dynamite.
It really is. It feels that way too. When you're getting excited about something and you're both kind of like, it's the best. It's one of my favorites.
And do you two perform live at all?
Yes. Yes, we do. I've performed kind of his individual project and he's performed with mine. And now we're doing like this one-off like cover band thing. So we're doing a lot of random kind of projects. And we also both have been in Larissa Birdseye, one of our friends.
Oh, hey, shout
bands.
out.
Yeah.
Shout out Larissa Birdseye.
Loving the merch. But yeah, so we've kind of just done several iterations of live show together.
Okay, hell yeah. And then once you get a track finished writing, so it doesn't have to be like released per se, but once you've finished writing a track, how long does it usually take you to feel comfortable performing it?
Well, it kind of depends. I've been in the scenario where I would go to, singer-songwriter open mics and play something I'd just written like that day or that week.
Yeah. Give it a go, see what people what it sounds like out loud.
And that's a lot of the time, like I have done a lot of acoustic shows because that's, what you have available to you sometimes. Yeah. And that's a place where I can just, if I wrote this, I can play it start to finish. It is not going to translate how I wish it would. But in theory, that song is finished because it's written.
Yeah. I think that's part of the magic too.
Yeah.
When you first try something out, you want to see
totally
how it differs.
Well, in live, the life of the song kind of grows from there. I've definitely played songs that I, had just written, or I played songs that I had written several years ago and kind of tossed aside but wanted to play something different, and then that's the song that people have connected to the most, and it comes out of the vault and it's oh, I should work on that. That's actually the next song that I am going to release is one of those songs that I had hidden for so long that I was kind of eh. And then the first time I played it and every time since live, people really liked it, and I was oh, it made me like it more.
I mean, sometimes there's definitely been a handful of times where I've just been setting something aside because I'm just I don't know if and then one day it hits and you're
oh,
why didn't I?
On this?
How silly of me.
I know I made it, but why wasn't I aware that it was good? Yeah, no, I get that.
Oh yeah, and actually that's a good segue into talking about some of your music.
Yeah.
I was checking it out on Spotify.
Yes.
It's a little bit sparse at the moment, but I feel like that's by design.
Yes.
And so I did check out The Keeper of Artillery. Yes. And it's a cool track.
Thank you.
And it's cool because hearing your explanation of it, of your approach, I'm oh,
you can see how I
hear it exactly.
Yeah.
But, and I did do, I usually just bit where I break down a track that I enjoyed. And since there was one, I decided to lean into this one a little bit. But I dig the super driving, straightforward bass in the beginning. As a bass player myself, that locked me in immediately.
Thank you.
And it was crawling strings that happened just before you came in. They really they set the tone just right, and they built it up in just the right way. And I like the presence of your voice.
Thank you.
That's something that really stands out because it's it's calm, but it's commanding.
Yes.
And just by the time you get into the chorus, it's really that whole part is really powerful. But the thing that I appreciate most is that when I was listening to it, I'm usually pretty good at being oh, this reminds me of this, this reminds me of that. I couldn't pinpoint a thing. There was nothing that immediately jumped out at me. So it sounded very much like you.
I like that.
And in the genre, it's very easy to be that's
what this.
And even hearing you say some of your influences, I'm oh, I can
see that.
I can see that. But when I was listening to it, nothing immediately jumped out as this artist.
Yeah, that's so cool because it's when you get asked what kind of music do you make,
it's a hard question.
It's one of those things that you kind of stop working for a second and try to figure it out. And I've always said I think we're all kind of amalgamations of the things that inspire us. And when there's so many things that inspire you, it's this just hodgepodge of stuff. And that's kind of where I was trying to describe it too for a while. And I was I know where I'm getting my influences from. And I could, list them and pick them out. But I also appreciate that I don't really know how to describe this.
Yeah. That
makes me feel oh, that means I'm doing something fun. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
When I had to pick out the genres for my last band, Smooth Talk, I decided to go with the elements of the music that we all came from instead of being this is what it is.
Yeah.
So my keyboard player was heavily electronic based, so there was that.
Yeah.
I was heavily funk based, so there was that. And my guitar player was heavily rock based, so it was electronic funk rock.
That's actually, I like that theory because I still wouldn't ever know, but like my melting pot like comes from my like two favorite artists of all time are Taylor Swift and 21 Pilots. And then you start going, okay, where do those come in? And then it goes broader and broader and broader where I don't really know where they meet in the middle, but somehow it's in me, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
And also genre is such a vague entity.
Oh, I don't even think genre exists at this point. Like, it's just, there's too much going on.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so many like individual sounds and things that's like, you can't even compare two people that are technically in the same genre now.
Yeah. Well, and even when I'm listing some inspirations like Grace Potter or Florence and the Machine, like, even the songs that I take from Florence and the Machine are not the ones that like
sound like them full time.
So, like, then it's like, oh yeah, but have you heard their stuff? This is a unique part of their discography, and then also that's what I took into my stuff. So then we still don't know how we got here.
No, totally. It can even be like dependent upon like what era you find them in. Like I didn't like. There's a weird tangent, but I didn't know about Rush when I was younger. And the first album I ever heard by them was an album that I think came out in like 93 called Roll the Bones. And it's like one that they like clearly like it was a contractual obligation. It was very like 90s like chill pop kind of like it was just like
interesting.
Like I know all the words.
Oh, totally.
And then later I found out that they were a big deal band who had made all these early hits.
Stuff before
everybody's like, oh, have you heard 2112? I was like, no. I love Rush.
But I love this.
You don't even know them.
Yeah, that's funny.
I think can play a big part of it as well.
Absolutely. 100%.
Just for the record, I have now heard 2112.
That's good.
It's okay. I'm kidding.
It doesn't hit the same.
Yeah, you know, it's just their later work, I think really brought, no.
I love it. The pretentious.
But getting back to this.
Yes.
What are some of your favorite songs that you enjoy performing?
Ooh, in general of mine. Well, we kind of just recently put together like my own live show because I grew up doing music. I was in every kind of band and doing it all throughout my teens, and we played like literally every genre you can think of. So a lot of like classic rock and just jazz and just everywhere. And country was where I started. So at the time growing up, like I was a big fan of playing Rhiannon specifically because I'd love to just absolutely wail like 70s Stevie and lose my mind a little bit. Anything that I can kind of yell is really fun for me. And now, you know, I do like playing, you know, some throwback Taylor or Paramore, just something that's really high energy. I often stick towards high energy because I think performance is my favorite part of this whole music thing.
Oh yeah.
That's where I get my adrenaline rush. I'm not a junkie with that. I don't like roller coasters. I don't like the drop.
Same.
But like where I get what makes me feel the most alive is performing music. So
that makes sense. And definitely it's a very unique experience, especially for like the people that don't know. Like there really is nothing quite like it. Especially like when you get people that can sing the songs back to you.
Oh my God. Well, that's kind of like the blessing and the curse of growing up doing covers that are, you know, very beloved. People, you know, are responding to the songs that they know, and you get really into that. And so when you're kind of starting to play your own stuff, I feel very confident in doing like cover performances, and I feel confident enough in my own stuff, but there is like a weird disconnect of like, okay, but I'm gonna be the one who knows this song.
Yeah.
And it's not gonna hit the same as like a crowd that just intrinsically already knows what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
Which is really cool and really difficult to transition into.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that. I mean, I guess, you know, there's a big gray area in the world of like when you're like doing all originals, like do you add covers in, and like what is the appropriate one? Yeah.
It's fun to play the game of like, do I add a cover for the crowd pleaser, or do I add like a cover of something that I just want to play that fits with my music or inspired it? And yeah, it's a weird kind of like little mesh. But I definitely have a lot of like what my songs would be like if a crowd knew them in my head.
I think that's important.
And so getting to that point is going to be interesting in terms of like finally hearing anything back, which, I mean, the first time I played Artillery was really cool because some people had been listening to that week, and hearing a couple people saying, I was like, that's fun.
Yeah,
that's weird.
Well, it's fairly catchy too. So like by the second chorus, you've learned the first chorus.
When you know, when you know what's coming, I appreciate that. And it's also a short song.
That's fair. Yeah, it's not the longest. Yeah,
times,
you can play through it a few times before you're like, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of like that element too. Is like, if you didn't feel like you got enough, I guess you could play it again if you wanted to. That's fine. Yeah, but my next one's like double this length, so.
Okay. Yeah. And actually that segues well into the next question.
Perfect.
Tell us about some new music that you're working on. What can we look forward to as far as like stylistic differences in approaches?
It's funny.
What can we expect?
It almost feels like a not quite vast jump, but a vast jump in stylistic, just in everything kind of. I went from, like a nearly 2.5 minute song being like the first thing that I put out of my own to a song that's roughly under 5 minutes, and a
ballad.
Yeah. And it's not.
I'm kidding.
It's very, we kind of described it as like, it is a little bit more like 70s classic rock vibes, Eagles-y. But to me, I like the angsty stuff, and a lot of what I write is pretty angsty, aggressive in terms of just lyrical content, even if it doesn't sonically sound that way. But this is like one of my softer songs, even still in being like a little angry. And I like that, like, it almost feels like something you can kind of coast on, which is not what I normally like performing, but because of how I've seen people respond to it, it makes it really fun for me. And so it makes the, length of time that it is, and, the fact that it does have a repeating chorus and doesn't stop short. Kind of sweet that it has like a little journey. But yeah, it's very much more elongated, more relaxed, a little less murderous. Which it'll come back.
Darn.
Don't worry. It's in most of my stuff. I get very intense, but this one is more laid back, and I'm excited because one of my like close friends in musical stuff in Portland, Haley Johnson, this is like an exclusive, is gonna do some like background vocals on it with us.
Well, you heard it here first.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that. So the song should be coming out in a month or two. So I'm excited to get her voice on there because I look up to her so much, and she has that kind of 70s rock vibe too. So.
Hell yeah. Well, definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Does it have a name yet?
It's called But I've Tried.
Hell yeah. I dig that.
Thank you.
Now I want to take a moment and step back. Let's look at music as a whole.
Okay.
And really just, what are some things either in like new music in general, or at least new music to you, that you're like finding inspiration and you enjoy?
Ooh, we had talked about this at some point earlier today, but I love intaking new music. Whenever it comes out every week, I always like to sit down with a lot of new stuff. And there's never like one thing that I'm specifically looking for. I, often look at similar artists or things that I know, okay, I liked stuff from them before.
Yeah.
But usually I'm a very percussive person in terms of what I'm interested in. My songs, I definitely am always thinking about percussion first. I have my producer, James, we have this ongoing joke that I have like a very specific strumming pattern that is, and that I'm trying to break, but I do it to compensate the fact that there's no drums around. And it's very percussive. And so I am a big drum fan. And when I think like big drums, I'm thinking like massive earth shaking drums, like play it in your car and you're gonna get like a heart attack kind of thing.
Lots of excision.
Yeah. So when I like find something that like really hits like that, definitely big fan of like very intense and like intricate drum choices. I also am a big fan of like songs that can like leave space in a way that's interesting, because that's a very like specific art.
Very much so.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to do. So when I can find something that doesn't, I have ADHD, so that doesn't bore me in a way, and is like a really intelligent spatial choice, I think that is one of the most interesting things you can do. So I'm really into like looking at those little pockets of things.
No, damn, I rarely have people who kind of describe those moments. But I also look at music, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I dig that for sure.
Very obsessive about
it. Well, I mean, again, this really references a lot of off-camera talk, but like for me, I really feel like music nowadays is so accessible. Like, you know, like I don't feel it's oversaturated in the way that a lot of people perceive it. I think that it's very like there is so much available, but there's so many ways to find it.
Totally.
And it just, if you put the effort in, you're always going to find something where you're like, oh man, this is interesting. This is really inspiring.
Coolest, like things that can change your life.
Yeah.
Truly.
Well, and people are allowed to do so much more now. Kind of going back to what we were saying about the lack of genre. Being a reality anymore is just like
so much.
Anything can be anything. So like you can have, even like on a production level, like you can have this like indie sound that's produced with like this electronic approach and get like something like Turnstile's most recent album. Their production was ungodly. It was so good. And not because it was like any kind of way, but like there was just this different type of definition that made me appreciate the sound that was coming from it and really be able to kind of experience the genre even in a way that I hadn't really perceived a lot.
It's production choices and unique production choices, and not for the sake of doing a unique production choice, but what serves the song is really cool. Caroline Polachek is really good at that. Like there's one of her songs that I'm obsessed with has like fiddle and like a bagpipe solo. Like there's just so many random choices that truly serve the song, but you are so taken off guard, and I love that. I love that kind of thing. But yeah, it's fun finding you. It's a treasure hunt when you're listening to music.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah,
that's a great way to put it.
Digging.
Yes. All right. But with that being said, we've got one last question to go in this middle portion.
Okay.
And this is probably the densest question in the interview.
Okay.
But we've talked a lot about, you know, your experiences with music, the actions, the reactions. But when it's you and the music one-on-one, what does music give back to you?
Oh, man. I have always kind of landed on my description of my relationship with music as... I mean, it's definitely a vital thing, and I love it. Couldn't imagine not doing it. Like, it is definitely what I live for, and it's definitely like, this is kind of dark, but like the thing that would kill me too. Yeah. Because having such a deep, intense connection to something that is such a life force is something that like can be very damaging too, because it feels like you fight with it a lot, but it's because it matters. And so to me, like, I mean, just at my deepest, lowest, there's always something musically that has changed where I'm at when I've been in like my worst spots. And I think that is important enough to like, it also is just highlights everything that's good too. Yeah. It's a part of every element of existence for me. I don't like silence. I really try to fill it. And so music is kind of what that is. It's basically breathing. Performing it is my favorite thing to do. And I know I've talked about that, but like it truly is like all I can imagine doing for dream world. Yeah. If I could just sing a song every day, perfect. Like, and really just put everything into it. But listening to it too, this is like a slight tangent, but it definitely is kind of, I'm a big fan girl. I think a lot of people, if they didn't know me very well, if they could describe one thing about me, it's like being a fan of something, because I'm pretty loud about it when I care. And so that kind of has a weird connotation when you're, you know, a teenage or girl in her 20s, which is where I'm at. But like growing up, that's something that kind of feels like it's not a very serious thing. Just being passionate about something. And I think that's like a ridiculous kind of connotation that we have correlated to being a fan of something, is just being a fangirl. But I am a big fangirl of things that I care about. And, you know, falling in love with Taylor's music, Taylor Swift, and just seeing how she grew as an artist, and like seeing myself, and that kind of inspiring me to find what is intrinsically something that I cared about regardless. Like, I will always have that connection with her music. And same with 21 Pilots, who, you know, have and not only a concept album, but a concept catalog. Like, their whole discography of the last over a decade is all a story that they've created. And I think something so immersive like that, I mean, I definitely wouldn't, I don't think I would be here without it. And how important that is to me, just ingesting that, just having like their music was enough for me. But then also the concept of creating it too, like, and knowing how important their creation is to me and to other people. Not saying that like mine has to be life altering for somebody, but it alters my life by creating it too. And then knowing that it could take on a life for somebody else, like there's so much purpose in that. When, you know, when life is hard, it's hard finding a purpose, right? So music to me is like having a purpose, and that's not everybody's, but I think it's kind of what we do the life thing for, is finding what that is. And I feel very lucky that like I found what that is so young, and I fight with it and I have my moments with it, but like couldn't imagine anything else. So it really is just life force. It's blood. Like that's what it is to me. So it gives me pretty much everything.
Damn.
Yeah.
That is a very well put together answer. And no, I think that, I mean, you touch on a lot of the things that I think are the most important parts of music. It almost sounds like music found you at a very young age, more than anything else.
Yeah.
And one thing I kind of want to circle back on, you said it very, very early on, but you said that your music changes when times are tough for you. Do you acknowledge those changes when they happen, or is it something where it's like calm after the storm, you look back and go, oh, it has changed?
It depends. It's interesting because there are times, whether it's in just the music I listen to or the music I'm making, that like, you know, you realize the growth you've kind of undergone or where certain things come from. Like when I write something, I'm not always completely sure what it is about.
Yeah.
Like obviously I have some idea, but there have been a lot of times where I really deep dive later and can see where things come from and where I, you know, might not feel that same way anymore, or I can see in me how much I've changed, and that's like a positive, like linear thing to see. There are definitely songs that I've written that I don't particularly believe in the sentiment, but I believe in the art that I created. Therefore, I'll still play it, and just not exactly embody it. And I feel that same way about my music taste too. But I also like that it transports you in time, where a lot of stuff I don't still listen to in the same way that I did 3 years ago. But as soon as I put it on, I'm 3 years back in my head. And I think that's a really cool thing, that it's almost like a capsule of where you're at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I forget whose episode I said this on. Whoever it was, shout out to you. But they mentioned that for them, like their music is kind of a moment in time, like when they make it. And I never really put that piece together, that making a song gives you an opportunity to time capsule yourself.
Totally.
You always remember making the song. You know what I mean? Like you always are able to like kind of live back in that time. And so that I think is kind of an interesting point in general. It's cool to have heard it again so recently. I really like that concept.
Well, it's also kind of, to me, it's like tattoos. I think there's
it's a really cool way of describing it.
Well, I also think that in the beginning especially, and that's kind of where, not that, I mean, I've been performing for well over a decade, but like in terms of releasing something, I just released my first song, and you're very precious about it. And as artists, we're precious about a lot of things, but like your first tattoo, you're very precious, like, oh, I'm going to have this on in my life forever, or this is how people are going to view me from the get-go, or blah, blah, blah. And then you start getting them, and then you're like, wait, that was easy. Maybe I could do it again. Yeah. And then you kind of get a little bit more maybe creative with it, or less about like, this has to mean everything to me. And
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Covered in
hilarious anime tattoos.
Well, and that's the thing is like, in many ways, I think I have some tattoos that I wouldn't particularly get right now, but I got it as it's a part of my story, right? So I'll look back at it and I was like, I got this for that reason at that time. And I don't need to be as precious about it being like, oh, I'm going to have it when I'm 60 and my skin's wrinkly and I just don't want it. I don't want that No, I think like it's a part of who you are, and your songs are in the same way. Like I wanted to represent a good, part of who I am in a first release, but you can't put everything in there, and that's one part of my story. And I like that. I like being able to see kind of that patchwork of all those parts of who you are, so it doesn't all have to be in one get-go.
No, and I think the earliest music itself is supposed to be kind of a representation of the moment, but the first song is the hardest.
Oh my God, yeah.
But the only thing harder than the first song is the one after. Like you just gotta like, as long as you keep doing it.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
But the more you do it, kind of like you said with the tattoos, the more you do it, then suddenly you stop thinking of the next song and you start thinking of like the addition to the catalog.
Totally.
And that I think is the coolest moment, when you can look back after a stretch of time and just be like, this is a stretch of time that now exists. This is the time capsule is a good example, but now you're looking at a window of times, not just that one moment. But the first one is, still important. And I think it always bums me out when people are like, oh, I took my first song down. I'm like, you shouldn't.
No, I want to see
I get
the
it.
journey.
Yeah, I you can still go watch the first video episode of this show. Like it's there. You can go listen to the first episode on Spotify. It's there.
That's cool.
But, like, that progress is enjoyable. And I think it's important. I think those first moments should matter, but they shouldn't be like the wall. You know what I mean? They should be the start of that mountain that you climb.
Well, and I like it's kind of the same, and everybody has their own relationship with social media, and it can be super unhealthy or super healthy in the way that you use it. But there are times where I think of you could wipe everything. You could wipe everything. And I'm like a sentimental, like a memory hoarder, where I don't know who's going to ever scroll back through all of my posts ever, but there's part of me that kind of is like, I like the little digital footprint of none of that is really of who I am completely, but it was part of how I got here, and I think it's fun.
It's part of who you are now.
Yeah, and so even if like there are things that like I could just wipe clean and start over, like you can't really do that with life. There are times where I wish I could like shake my brain and start over, but you can't. So it's kind of like that, where I like the footprints of how we got here. And I mean, you gotta, Taylor Swift said this too, embrace the cringe. Like, you're always gonna feel weird about it. Yeah. It's okay. We all do, though. That's the human part.
I think if you were living life enough, you're gonna have those moments.
Totally.
Trying and failing is a part of trying.
Yeah. Well, and you can only do it by starting somewhere. Yeah. Even when it's a scary place.
Oh, yeah. But I think we have gone on this one for long enough. Thank you for digging into that. I really enjoyed your answer.
Thank you.
But now we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to some hypothetical questions.
I like this.
And for these, the sky's the limits. The questions are all made up, so the answers are allowed to be as well.
Perfect.
But this first one's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
If you could work with any one person, the only requirement is they have to be alive. Who would you want to work with, and how would you want to work with them?
Ooh. I mean, knee-jerk reaction would be to say, like, my favorite artists, like Taylor or 21 Pilots, but there's, like, a a realistic part of my brain, and I use that very loosely because it's not like, oh, I'm gonna be working with these people, but my brain says like the producers I would want to work with. And I have like 5. Which, because I can, I will name them all, but I definitely would say one at the end of it. But Jon Bellion would be my number one. I think his creative process is insane. He had videos of like the making of so many of his stuff that like inspired me. I declared my minor in audio production after watching them. Like, the passion that he has is so inspiring. Jon Bellion, Jack Antonoff, Paul Meany, who's worked with 21 Pilots, Trent Reznor, and Blake Mills. Those are all producers that one day dream crew, but Jon Bellion, like, for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can get them all on one album and have the craziest first
that
album
would be insane. Wow. I mean, if I could have a dream, that would be the dream album for sure.
Oh, yeah. And then subsequently, who are some local people that you're aware of that you haven't gotten to connect with yet, but you would like to?
Well, I mean, I've connected on a personal level in terms of like I am friends with these people, but I definitely think artistically I would love to collaborate with Presidio, the duo. They're amazing and the sweetest people on earth, but like also the most talented, incredible. I love them so much. And I mean, I'm already doing it with Haley Johnson at this point, so that would be my other answer. So we're getting there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then for this next one, like I said before, sky's the limit, and it's pretty literal in this sense. But if you could perform anywhere in the world, and you wouldn't have to worry about crowd access or building stability or power, it was guaranteed the best lineup, guaranteed the best show, and it doesn't have to be a venue. It could be anywhere.
Okay.
Where would you want to perform?
Like the only thing I've ever physically written on a bucket list is a venue, and it would be Red Rocks. But if it was outside of that realm, I feel like something like with a fantasy element, like the Scottish Highlands, or there's Aurora, the artist Aurora, Norwegian nymph, like beautiful human being.
Definitely been mentioned on the show before.
Yeah, I'm sure. She had like this performance that was filmed like in the middle of a forest, and it was just that. The energy feed that would give to me. Oh, I would love to do something like that. That would be amazing. So yeah, just watching it alone was exciting. So doing it would be thrilling.
What you're talking about. Yeah, it's really good.
So good. Yeah. There's something so just like earthly and amazing and intense about that kind of thing. And so yeah, if in the middle of a forest, I guess.
Oh yeah. Oh hey, that's very doable.
Yeah.
I may or may not have a couple episodes on this show.
Hey,
have been performances in forests.
Let's make it happen, guys. Let's go to the forest.
And then to wrap up the hypothetical question, if you could get one more album from anybody, they could be alive, they could be dead, they could have not put out an album in 100 years, they could have put out an album yesterday. Who would you want an album from?
Ooh, hot take, at least for me alone, is the Civil Wars, the Americana duo from like 2010, I think is probably where they were peaking. But they had 2 records that, I mean, they were hugely inspirational to me and my artistry and writing and all of that. And they broke up after 2 records. And that, like, truly is a part of my life that I remember very well because of the just mourning I was going through. I remember shortly after that announcement, my mom and I were like at a beach somewhere sharing earbuds, just crying, listening to their music. They were really amazing together. They both do music separately, and John Paul White is one of them, and he as a writer is someone I would also love to work with. But if they were ever to collaborate again on a Civil Wars record, that would be insane. I think that would be what I would want again. But like specifically from that time period too.
That you would have wanted that third album to be like, hey, we actually
Yeah,
work on
right
it. We
there.
just never released it. Now it's here.
Yeah, that would have been really cool. But yeah, that's one of those like lost loves. I also think the band Third Story that had one record. They had an amazing record, and that would be cool to hear from again.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. All right. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and start wrapping this up.
Okay.
What can we look forward to between now and February?
Oh, okay. Well, my next song will probably be out in September, loosely.
Just in time for
Maybe Friday the 13th. True. And I have a show coming up with my friend James, who I've talked about multiple times now. We do have a song out together, actually, called Alibis. But we threw together a pop punk cover band because we wanted to.
Oh, exciting.
And we're playing at the Holocene on August 11th. So pop punk stuff for fun. Any fans of My Chemical Romance and Paramore and all that, that's the place to be. And I think I'm singing with Larissa Birdseye at Landing Festival later in the month. But yeah, just little sprinkles of things here and there.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And then for this next one, go and look straight at the camera. Tell everybody how they can find you.
Okay. You can find me at Maykenzie Joy on Instagram and Spotify and YouTube, where I made a music video for The Keeper of Artillery. And yeah, there should be only one. That should be me.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And then any other plugs, any other shout outs, anybody else you'd want to put on while you're on here?
Ooh. I mean, James Julian Villa, he's an incredible producer. He's worked with a lot of people. He did a lot of Larissa Birdseye's music as well. Love that guy. Love Larissa. Love a lot of these people. And catch us doing amalgamations of each other's music. It'll be fun.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. With that being said, we've got one last question to go.
Okay.
But before we do, I'm going to steal the camera for just a second.
Sounds good.
As always, y'all, please make sure to like, subscribe, push all the buttons, do all the things. You know, I don't know where they are, but you do, and I trust you. And one more shout out to the Brothers Apothecary, Ronald Records, and Portland Water. Thanks for keeping us hydrated. And with that being said, the final question.
Okay.
And this is entirely up to your interpretation. But what is an album you feel is more on the obscure side? It's a deep cut. It's one not a lot of people would know, but it's one you think everybody should know.
I think The Fool by Rin Weaver. I fell in love with it in high school. It was one of the first times that I felt as a songwriter like that is a voice that makes sense to me. And I actually in the pandemic became friends with Rin. So I think more people should listen to that record because it is magical. Front to back, it has a whole cyclical story. So it's really cool.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for that recommendation.
Of course.
But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And this has been another exciting episode of Jimmy's Jambox. I'm Jimmy.
I'm Maykenzie.
And we're signing off. Later, y'all.
That's a wrap. This is not a podcast. This is a show.
Keep jamming.